This video is intended for entertainment and historical purposes only. It's not meant to be an instructional, tutorial, or provide professional advice. The crosshead is a mechanical device that converts the linear motion of a piston into rotary motion at a crank. The full force of the piston meets the full load on the crank directly at the crosshead wrist pin. This places an immense amount of stress on both the crosshead and its guides. This stress point is where any slack or misalignment between the crosshead and its guide will be directly converted into wear, damage, or even disaster during operation. You'll find that almost every steam engine on Earth, regardless of its design, size, or purpose, has some sort of a crosshead. Although much less common, you can also find crossheads on certain early or oil field style internal combustion engines. Regardless of the machine you're working with, the principles required to accurately lay out a crosshead are pretty much the same across the board. Looking back at how we found engine number 1, the piston rods were bent, the guide bars were corroded, and one crosshead was broken. In episode 6, we fixed the broken crosshead. And last month, in episode 22, we addressed the guide bars. Now it's time to make new bronze bearing surfaces, known as crosshead gibs or slippers, so the crossheads can be permanently mounted to their guides. So today, we're going to go through the process of laying out the crossheads and machining new gibs. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and let's get to work.
I'm now getting ready to fit the crosshead gibs. And to that end, I've used the same rod that we used to line the crosshead up carefully. I have cut 12 inches off of it to make it shorter. And I have machined a taper on this rod that accurately fits the crosshead. And so I'm going to mount the crosshead on that taper, make sure it's solid, and then measure the gaps for the gibs. So the crosshead is now mounted on this piece of shafting, the front of which is in the piston at the very front. It's accurately aligned here. It's on a taper. Sometimes you will find that these crossheads are not quite machined square, that this taper that's in here is not quite parallel to these surfaces. And you can tell that as the engine wears, that the gibs wear more on one side and the other, but this one's not too bad. So what I've done is I've measured in here and in here so I can make the crosshead gibs up, and they just slide in. Now, the reason this gap here, which is about 1/4 of an inch, and this is 1/2 an inch, is because the crosshead over the years has been machined to resurface it. And so it sits on this perch and is machined all the way from one side to the other. And of course, that makes it sit lower. In addition, the top has been turned off and to machine this surface, and I made it lower still. So we have some figures up here where you can see I've actually measured the top and the bottom thicknesses, and one is 1/4 of an inch more than the other. That means there's 1/4 of an inch more. 1/4 of an inch has been taken off of this bar over the years. So that just means I make a thicker gib here and a smaller one here, and everybody will be happy. The whole point in this is that once you have the piston and the piston rod in, it's very difficult to line this crosshead up accurately. And so I'm doing it ahead of time, and then when I make the piston rod and fit it in the piston and put it through all the packing and all the business that's here, it will be accurate and I won't have to mess around too much with it. In addition, I will be able to hang the rod. It goes from that crank pin way back there and up in here. And then I will be able to roll the engine back and forth to check the clearance volume for the cylinder. So you have to sort of work your way towards this. So that's what's happening here. By the way, as the gibs wear, it's merely a matter of tucking a shim in between this piece and the gib to make it tight again. This is where you pack shims. This plate bolts over to allow you to do that. Well, we're back at the hacksaw again. This time I'm cutting up a bar of 660 bronze that I'm going to use for making up the gibs for the locomotive, the gibs that slide on the crosshead. They're essentially a piece of 5/8 material that you can buy all made up. And so the first thing I'm doing is cutting some blanks out so I can machine up 4 of them. And to that end, we'll just engage the hacksaw. And by the way, this is a special blade. Ordinary hacksaw blades just slide over this stuff. They don't do too well. This is a 10 tooth per inch with a different angle. It's made for bronze, and it really just walks right through it. So we'll engage it. And you can see that it's just walking right through it. Otherwise, you'll be here all day. So there is a bronze blade that you can buy that's designed to cut bronze, especially leaded bronze, because it's such slippery stuff. So we're going to make up 4 of these pieces, and then we'll move over to the mill and start making them up. I'm just showing you this because leaded bronze has its own sound when it's being machined. Sort of a skishy, screechy noise. You don't use lubricant because the lead provides it, but it does have its own sound. When the machine tools are working correctly in this stuff, they make that sort of kissing noise that you hear as the bronze is being torn apart. And that's what you'll hear on a lathe or on a milling machine. There's a certain sound that leaded bronze makes when it's being worked, and that's what this is. To compensate for how thin these crosshead bars, they've had a 1/4 inch taken off of them over the years. And so this surface ends up too low. And I decided to balance the thickness of the crosshead gibs by raising this bar 1/8 of an inch. So to that end, I've made a shim, 1/8 material. This is 119 thou thick. And it's going to go into there and raise this bar up. And this end, I have to raise the bar up. I had to machine some off of this anchor bolt. You can see it's a little bit notched in now, but it doesn't really hurt it. And it's been machined, 119 thou has been taken off and countersunk. And now it's just a matter of stipping it in the hole and bolting it all together. And that will raise it all 119 thou. You can see the fit is pretty good. And the bolt goes down nicely. At the end of the day, if someone makes new crosshead bars, it's to compensate. It's merely a simple matter of taking this shim from the front end and moving it to the back end. So this bar will again drop down to its original elevation, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. So that's what we've done to both sides, and then we'll start making the crosshead gibs themselves. So what I'm up to here is measuring how thick the gibs have to be. To that end, I use my trusty old feeler gauges. You make sure that you can slide them all the way across, because sometimes it's not square. And then you take your mic and you measure this, and that gives you the thickness. Previously I mentioned that these things are not square. Very rarely are, really. So that's what we've got. Top and bottom. I space as best I can. You got to make sure that this is well over and everything is square and everything lines up, but these are never square to the crosshead guides when the taper's fitted. You got 2 ways of doing this. You can machine it to the minimum. In other words, in this case, you would machine it to 350 and it would be loose on this end, and you can machine this one to 385 and it would be loose on this end, and the engine will wear it in for you. And you just have to remember to add shims, and these never really have to be that tight. A little up and down motion doesn't hurt at all. So 10, 15, 20 thou up and down doesn't matter. I'm going to machine these accurately with about 10 to 15 thou spacing, and then I don't have to worry about them again. So this is the first gib. It's been machined up. It's a couple of thou fat. I'm not really worried about that. And they just slip in like that. They just sit in there. These ends keep them from slipping out. And as they wear, you can put shims in here. We'll do the other one and get it not too tight. You don't want them too tight because they'll bind. But get them in and see where we go from there. Multiple times in the past, you've heard me refer to how these locomotives are all the same, regardless to their size. It's just everything's bigger or smaller. This is a crosshead gib for this engine. And this is the very end of a piece of bronze that was 2 feet long. That was a crosshead gib for a mainline engine. You can see it's just more material, but exactly the same design. I made up new crosshead gibs for this big engine, and I had to cut a little extra material off, and this is what's left over. So it's just a matter of scale. It's nothing really. What you're seeing and learning on this little engine directly applies to big engines. This is how I machine these gibs in my little mill. You can see I've been at it for a while. The cardboard in the background, this stuff flies all over the place. It's difficult to machine tidily. This is the piece that we're going to machine. And on the ends are written, that is the inside width that I want. And this is how much material I want left. It's written on each end. And these two spacers, these are both keys, but this one is 1/4 thou less than this one. And so this piece will be placed in there so that the lesser side, which is 410, will be here. And this is 400. And it will be clamped in here, and then we'll machine all of what we don't want away. When clamping material in these vices on a spacer, as we discussed before with the shaper, this jaw will lift up a little bit. It doesn't matter how tight they are, they always do. So you tighten down on it a little bit, and then you take your hammer and you give it a smack. And that knocks it down. You can hear it's hollow, now it's solid. So it's seated on those two spacers. They're not loose anymore. And then you just proceed to start machining. It should be fairly accurate. This milling machine that I use is an old reliable Cincinnati MH2 lathe that was built in milling machine. It was built in 1942 and used by Boeings to build B-17s. And it's been in service ever since then. Now, I'm not going to show you a whole bunch of milling because the gears are really getting worn on this machine and it's very noisy. But essentially the procedure is to work back and forth, cut up to a border just short of what you want this distance inside, and back the other side and down across and back. And just keep working your way around and milling it down a bit at a time until you get to the parameters that you want. So as you can see or hear, this machine's pretty noisy because it's paid its dues. And there you have that same sound I've told you about before with the hacksaw. This material, it does not cut, it tears. It doesn't matter what you do, you just get crumbles, you don't get curlicues. And it has its special sound for highlighted bronze. So I'll keep doing this back and forth until I get it down to the parameters that I want. So now I've made a couple of rounds. I've stopped to measure this distance here and to make sure that everything is proceeding the way I want it. When machining bronze, especially leaded bronze, the tool has a lot of draft. It wants to dig into it, whether it's a drill or a milling machine. So these edges have been just lightly flattened out a bit so they don't dig so much. But you also have to be careful when you come up to this point and then you just need to go across. The machine, this is an old machine. It doesn't have any, it has play. It wants to move around. And so you got to be really careful that this bit doesn't dig into the material here and take out more than you want. And I've almost bit the bullet here. I've only got 6 thou left, so I'm going to stop a little shorter and go around. And just a matter, especially with these old machines, just watching what they're up to and trying to make them do a good job with, you know the old joke about a good machinist can get good work out of an old machine and a poor machinist can't. But these old machines are really good. There's lots of iron in them. They're very stable, and even though it's worn, gravity tends to keep it. If you wanted to hog a lot of material out, well, then you might have problems. But just fiddling around with light stuff, this old girl works really well. So I've milled this down to where I'm getting close. I'm now going to take it out of the machine and measure this edge with a mic to find out just how close I am to where I want to be. So this piece here is 455 and this is 445. I'm looking for 415 and 400. That means I've got to take another 45 thou off of this to get it to the correct parameters. Well, these machines have various verniers on them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this at 0 right there. And then when I crank this up to 45, it's raised this table 45 thousandths of an inch. And that gets me to where I want to be. And the next step is going to be to carefully, you can see this, I was too close, almost too close. So I backed off a bit, and you can see this edge here. I have to machine a little bit out of the way to get that dimension. So we've got these all made up. They just press in like that. And that's what they're supposed to look like. They're loose enough that this can slide. We've added shims so that the thickness of the bronze is roughly similar from the bottom to the top. And of course it's lined up on the taper. So now it's a matter of putting the outer plate on and bolting it down and proceeding with mounting the connecting rods to see how that fits. The engine is all together, connecting rod wise. The rods on the back end have been fitted. They were separated and fitted before they were measured to fit the crank pin. So I just had to put them together. And the same at the front end. The brasses in there were all put together. The caps are on, the gibs are in place. And I have been lifting the engine up in the air with a car hoist. All that pile of stuff on the back is there to counteract the weight of the front cylinders, otherwise it tips up on its nose. So I just lift the whole thing in the air. It rests on the grease pockets, and it just I turn it with that pipe wrench you see in the middle.
Now that we have the rods, crossheads, and crosshead guides all installed, the next project will be to make new piston rods. But I think we'll save that for another day. Thanks for watching right to the end of the video. If you're enjoying the project so far, give the video a like and leave me a comment. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and check out one of these other videos from the series. I think you'll really enjoy them.